Rockhold was highly touted by a lot of people as the future long-term king of the UFC's middleweight division. And although his name will always be in the record books as a former UFC champion, his fall from grace was almost as meteoric as his rise. So let's talk about the career of Luke Rockhold. Luke would first rise into the limelight of mixed martial arts in Strikeforce. He would go 9-0 in the promotion, including 2 title defences as their middleweight champion. Luke would notch up some impressive wins in these 9 fights, including wins over UFC mainstays Keith Jardine, Tim Kennedy and Jacare Souza. His combination of elite jiu-jitsu and incredibly impressive kickboxing skills made him one of the most exciting signings into the UFC after they purchased Strikeforce. And for his debut in the biggest MMA brand in the world, he would be given Vitor Belfort in Brazil. Unfortunately for Rockhold, it was 2013, so therefore he got egg-kicked into oblivion by a nutty, sauced-up Vitor. Great start. But despite this obvious drawback, Rockhold would regroup, rebound and put together one of the most impressive 4-fight win streaks in the division's history. First things first, he would slam his chin directly into the guts of the nutty Greek Cypriot slaphead Kostas Philippou and get the first round TKO. Then on the undercard of UFC 172, he would wrap up the barbarian Bosch with a slick Kimura. Then after a spicy build-up, he would take a Mosley down under and get another submission victory over the British legend Michael Bisping. Something tells me that he might be coming up a bit later on as well. He would then extend his submission streak to 3 with a rear naked choke over the nutty, legendary, piss-drinking Brazilian Lyoto Machida. Then at UFC 194, Rockhold's crowning moment would finally come, as he would completely beat the pulp out of champion Chris Weidman and become the new king at middleweight. An immediate rematch was initially scheduled for UFC 199, but after an injury to the All-American, it gave an opportunity for a now nearly 40-year-old Michael Bisping to finally fight for a UFC title. But despite being a massive underdog and only taking the fight on a couple of weeks' notice, Mikey B would step in and left hook Larry the bollocks off of Rockhold and take his title. Lukey would then not see the cage again for over a year. He was probably too busy smashing Demi Lovato. On his return, he would fight the former World Series of Fighting light heavyweight and middleweight champion David Branch and finish the fight in the second with a TKO. This would set Rockhold up with a scheduled bout for the undisputed middleweight title against new champion Robert Whittaker down under. However, he got injured and was replaced by the freak Yoel Romero in an interim title bout. Unfortunately for Rockhold, his glass chin would come back to bite him straight on the bollocks again when the Soldier of God flatlined him with a beautiful left hand straight on the chin in the 3rd round. Luke's next bout was a step up to 205 pounds where he would fight rising contender Jan Blachowicz. He was already talking about fighting John Jones in the lead up, unfortunately he'd never get that chance, as a double fruity left hook would leave Rockhold looking like he's just downed 4 bottles of Smirnoff. Look at his face. Luke would then take 3 years away from the sport and return back at 185 pounds last summer at UFC 278 against the bonkers Brazilian Paulo Costa. The fight was an absolute barnstormer, but unfortunately for Rockhold, he'll come up short on the scorecards and then retire in the cage. But he will make his BKFC debut in a couple of weeks' time against the fruity Mike Perry. What a fight that's going to be. In my not so humble opinion, there are 2 reasons why Rockhold never quite reached the heights expected of him in the UFC. The first of which is his absolute paper-mache chin. He probably gets knocked over by a bloody balloon. But for me, the number 1 reason was his arrogance. He would always overlook his opponents, especially the rematch with Bisping and his fight with Jan Blachowicz. He would think he was that good, he just walked straight through him, and you can't do that in MMA. So to summarise, Luke Rockhold was a fantastic mixed martial artist, but he did underachieve and he was also a bit of a pillock.